Hello and welcome to July and welcome to No Prize Podcast. This is the Professor Bud Young and with me, as always, is Lucas. How are you, Lucas?
And incredible to be back, man. Can't wait, man. We got some hot dogs waiting on a freaking barbecue and everything good to go. And got my books all lined up, ready to read. Just happy to be back, Professor. Let's get into it.
Yeah. Well, we got some good comics this week. Well, I hope they were good. We'll talk about them. And we got a couple of episodes of Loki,
Hmm.
and then ramping up for what's next on the slate? Oh, we have Black Widow coming this week. Yeah.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, finally. It's been a year and a half, and I'm sure everybody is ready to just get that off their plate and move on. But we can talk about that a little bit if you want. There's been some footage that has come out, and then we got what do you get, a new Shang-Chi trailer and all that stuff
Hmm.
coming soon too. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Disney Plus's Loki. We have episodes 3 and 4 that dropped since the last time that we hit the air. What did you think? I thought so. So the third episode I thought was a bit slow, not much going on, and you get maybe one big reveal was that the people that were working for the TVA were actual people and not created by the TVA, which
Right.
which led to huge problems in episode 4.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um,
I mean, so that was mostly like a buddy cop episode, right?
yeah,
Just they hate each other. They got figured everything out. Then they're put in this impossible situation, and then as they're figuring everything out, then the bits and pieces of what's actually happening are starting to get revealed. So that one was pretty doggone good. I forget the name of the actress, but she's doing a bang up job for whoever she is. Well, let's call her Sylvie, right? Um,
yes,
because right now we're still trying to figure everything out. Is she female Loki, or is she the Enchantress, or is she just some lady named Sylvie? We're all trying to figure it out, and it's going to be interesting in the meantime, man. Um, but the things that she's been dropping, it's been wild, hasn't it, man? I mean, I've loved it. How about you?
yeah. So like I said, like the third episode. I remember like because I watch Loki every Wednesday morning with my son, right? Like before we get spoiled by anything, we gotta watch it as soon as it drops, and I was watching the third episode. I was like waiting for something huge to happen, but they saved it all for episode 4. Because episode 4 was, I think, probably if there was a pivotal moment in the series, it's that one. And so episode 3 basically is Loki and Sylvie escape the TVA and end up on this planet called Lamentus One, which is probably it's an apocalyptic planet it's an apocalyptic moon with a planet ready to crash into the moon, and so the people that are living there are trying to get off, and they have to get on a train and try to find a power source to recharge their device there. And so, I mean, it is kind of a plot-driven episode where they have to get to point A to point B, and of course, everything goes wrong on the way. And yeah, you're right. It does have a very much like a buddy cop feel, where they start off hating each other, and then of course the more they learn about each other, the more they learn that they are the same person in kind of like variant universes, right? So
Yeah,
that's
it's like
kind of the weird whole thing going on there. Um, now, so Sylvie is Loki, but it's an alternate reality version of Loki, and you find out later, and I think it's in episode 4. And they never really say it, because I know that when Sylvie is captured in episode 4 and in the elevator with Ravana, and she says, "What was my what did I do? Like, what was my crime?" And she said, I don't remember. But if you remember, they said earlier that her issue was the fact that she was born female, right, and that all the other
right.
Lokis were male. So that was her problem, was that her problem of being born a girl, which which to me that's a little thin, but I enjoyed it, and I liked the explanation of being able to have the Enchantress. But they kind of mess around with it in the MCU. So now the Enchantress really is an alternate universe version of Loki.
Right.
Um,
So yeah, I mean, so let's rewind, right? You said a very important point, man. Oh, her crime was that she was a female. Well, wait a minute. Wait a minute. She is not the first son of Odinson. First, she's not even Odinson's son.
yeah.
So this is where it drives me nuts, right? So this is a cultural thing, right? This is Asian culture, African culture, Middle Eastern culture, right? Where you want the firstborn, whatever, to be a boy, right? Because he eventually will inherit everything. So writers who are from this country, not understanding that that is a very important thing, just wrote this piece of crap role into existence, right? Um, so now, okay, even if you think that's a thing, like, okay, please explain to me why you think that she has to be born a son, right? Because Odin's had plenty of daughters, right? It's had Hela, right? And
Oh yeah.
he's had plenty of sons, right? Through Thor. There's another one born. Um, there's plenty of them out there that continues on the Odinson, and even gotta remember, Loki is not even Odinson's son, right? He's an ice dwarf or whatever, right?
Well, the thing to remember too is that Loki's gender fluid. Loki can turn female if he wants to, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's a that you know so when you kind of look at it through that lens, that's probably that can't be their Nexus event, right? It's got to be something different, and there's got to be some kind of like sinister plot that Ravana is doing as you kind of like almost the curtain gets pulled back a little bit in episode 4. You know, episode 3 is basically they spend the whole entire episode running from disaster
On
and
Lamentus, right?
yeah, on
And
Lamentus.
right, and that's an important location. So for those who have been tracking with us as for that old event, um, and this is where it would have actually landed up nicely for the Null invasion event, right? Um, One of the most important characters for the whole Null event was Wraith. So let me run this back. So the first appearance of Lamentus was in Annihilation Conquest Prologue, number 1, right? And that was where it was featured prominently and everything. And then that particular issue was the first appearance of Wraith. It was the first appearance of Khazar, Philavel, Tenkor, Daystar. I mean, a lot of great characters that play pretty well later on in the Guardians of the Galaxy continuity. So now that we have this Annihilation Conquest thing, now we know, and this eventually sets us up for any type of Annihilation Conquest storyline that the MCU was to do later on. It also sets up anything regarding the Dark Forces, the Dark World later on. It even freaking kind of sets us up for the Phalanx, right? Because that was prominently in that Annihilation Conquest, as
Hmm.
well as anything to do with Null. So location set, boom, and we know that something crazy happened, boom, there you go. That, even if you don't care about what happened with female Loki and male Loki, that's an important piece of that.
Wow. So and now from what you're saying, we might actually see Lamentus again in the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie. That might actually be one
Book
of
it.
the yeah, that might be
Taking
one of the set
bets.
pieces. Yeah. Okay. All right. So,
On the bet MGM right now and book the bet.
all right.
That's
All
what's
right.
happening.
It's all connected, right? So
Yes, it
we
is.
got to figure all this out. That's an awesome shout. That's great. Um, so basically, so there really wasn't much to talk about episode 3 because that's like I said, that was basically it. You get the little tidbit about the TVA, which that was future candy for episode 4, which was unbelievable. I thought
Right.
episode 4 was the best episode of the series so far. All the characters that you kind of get to kind of sympathize with and get to know, all of them have key moments in this episode. The and I can't, like, I'm trying to remember like step by step everything that happened, but it was just so every 5 minutes you were just like, oh my god. So there was a Nexus event. The Nexus event that got Loki and Sylvie rescued off Elementus was when they had almost like the beginnings of a romantic moment, which made the Nexus event spike. Because of course that would be like, and so they get rescued there and abduct and put back into prison, where Loki ends up talking with Mobius, and he says, you're a real person, you're not a creation of the TVA. Mobius doesn't initially believe him, but after investigations and talking to Ravonna, who is not very forthcoming and acting very suspiciously, believes Loki. And then Mobius busts Loki out of the prison that he put him in, and immediately after he gets caught by Ravonna, and Mobius gets deleted, right? Now, when that happens, that's like a huge moment in the show, because everybody that's been deleted is gone, dead, never existed, right? And so now
I mean, that's always the question, right? Because
right, yeah,
now, so there's two things, right? Number one is, if everybody that's here, that's in this TVA world, right, are variants, and if you can delete them or kill them or whatever, then you're not really killing the original, so whatever. But now we also figure that they also go to this other world, and I got to go back to figure out where this other world is. But that's going to be interesting as well, because right now we know for a fact that the set piece is inside that pink world, right? That extraterritorial world where Ant-Man is always going to, that quasi-quantum world. I hear people saying, "Well, it's theory." No, you read the comics, you know where it's at. That's where the TVA hideout at. That's where they do the thing. Micronauts #1. Read up on it. So that being said, okay, you get erased, then you go to this other place. What was all that about? It's going to be weird. So how many more episodes have we got? 2 more?
Yeah, there's only 2 left, so that's, I
Jeez.
mean, there's got to be big things coming, and so we just kind of that reveal afterwards, and then immediately after that, Ravonna brings Sylvie and Loki and puts them in front of the Timekeepers, who we see the Timekeepers for the first time. And
Big
there's
reveal. Big
the
reveal.
big battle happens, and Sylvie ends up killing and I want to say it's the Timekeeper that we've been saying looks like Kang the Conqueror, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now we find out that the Timekeepers are all robots.
Yeah.
And that's where they say, well, now who's in charge of the TVA then? And then Ravonna recovers and deletes Loki, which was a huge moment, because now you're like, well, they can't kill off Loki, so now that there's got to be something after the delete, right? Which we don't see unless you stayed through the credits and watched the after credit scene, which was just a chaos in itself, where Loki wakes up and he says, "Is this hell?" And then he says, "Or am I dead?" And he says, "But you will be." Someone says, "You will be if you don't come with us." And then they switch the camera, and you see 4 different alternate universe Lokis.
Yeah.
We have original 616 Loki, I want to say that is, because he's got the old costume and he's an old Loki. And you got Kid Loki, and then you get some kind of almost like a Thor Loki, right? Because it's a big black dude and he's got a hammer like Thor, right? And then you get an alligator with the little horn hat on. So to me, I was just like, that was like a perfect moment, because they didn't linger on the camera shot, right? It was like a 2-second camera shot where you just got enough to say, "What in the crap is this?" and then they just shut it off. So I could see where it's going. This is the multiverse, right? So
Yes, sir.
this is where I realize this prime timeline, or the sacred timeline, can't stand, right? They're gonna at the end of this show, that is gonna be gone, and you're gonna have the multiverse with all the different Nexus events creating offshoots of realities. That's where all these Lokis are from, is from the alternate reality, alternate universes. What's the next show that's coming out after Loki, coming out in August?
Well, we got the Black Widow movie, and
No, on
then
Disney Plus.
I'm not even sure. What is it?
What If?
Oh, yeah. What if?
And
But
what is the whole basis of What If? It's what happens in the alternate universes.
there you go.
That we have to look at that and say that's what's coming.
So what I'm thinking right now is that those 4 Lokis that you have sitting there, they're sitting inside the actual Nexus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So for those that don't know what the Nexus is, the Nexus is not just a theory or an action or anything. The Nexus is an actual place with a bunch of portals. So whereas the people from the time variance, they had to have their secret machine, their little machines, and they had to open up doors and everything. No, the Nexus is a bunch of portals, and what you do is you figure out which portal you want to go to, and you just go to it, and it takes you to a different universe or a different event or a time or whatever you need to freaking do what you got to do. Wanda, she was a big one when it comes to the Nexus of events. Man-Thing, he was a big one as well. Or is it Swamp Thing?
Yeah, it's a Man-Thing, because the Man-Thing, actually, the Nexus of all realities is in the Everglades in Florida, which is where Man-Thing was, and that was a lot of the cusp of Steve Gerber's Man-Thing work back in the 70s, was the Nexus of all realities and how things were squeaking out. That's where Howard the Duck came from. So it was just, anything could pop through that Nexus at any time, and that's basically where they got the concept that's in the MCU right now. So
yeah, so that'll be interesting to see them fill it out a little bit more. Yeah. So, because they've been working on that for like the last 2 years, trying to fill that out, give a little bit more details to how it works, and it's never going to be perfect, but at least they're using it. But yeah, that whole thing about the 3 time variance keepers, the timekeepers being robots, so that feels about right? Because every time she would go up to go talk to the timekeepers, I was like, well, is she really going to talk to anybody? And then, later on, it showed the eyes. It's like, oh, okay, I guess she is talking to somebody. But I know for a fact from Microsoft #1 is that they weren't really a thing you could talk to. They never really talked, right? They talked to themselves, but they never really talked to any other being.
Yeah.
They would communicate even in the one of the last nulls when they killed Wraithoff. They didn't talk through anybody through themselves. They talked through another person. So they would possess the person and then have that person talk to you versus talking to you themselves, right? Because they're gods upon gods upon gods, right? So I had always been suspicious of who she was talking to, but now we figure out what's going on, right? So so now the question is, where are the actual timekeepers? Where is King, right? Because that was supposed to be the whole thing of, one of the timekeepers is King. Well, King, he's not the dude to just sit around, right?
Yep.
He's the dude he's the dude to be in the action, and then he just moves on. So it quite possibly could be that at some point Kang may have defeated the timekeepers, set these robots up, because robots are totally a King thing, and then he rode on to do something else to protect the timeline that he had set up.
Yeah, I actually think that that we might get into some of the other weird Kang stuff. They might not reveal Kang as being the big villain of this or the person that's behind the TVA, because honestly, I think Kang's not behind the TVA, because I don't think Kang would be trying to restore a sacred timeline, right? Kang would be manipulating the timeline so that he's the ruler of it, right? Right. So to me, there might be some kind of other big guy. Perhaps maybe it's Immortus or another aspect of Kang that we might see in this series, where and I still am going to stick to my theory that Kang is actually going to turn out to be a variant of one of the timekeepers, or maybe the main person behind the TVA. So we'll see. I'm really interested in seeing how it's going to play out. But I would not be. I would expect that by the end of episode 6, or even in probably the after credit scene, they do have a Kang reveal. I mean, they almost have to.
Right. So in the coming months, they are going to Marvel. They are going to have a new Kang series. It's Kang #1.
Really?
And yes, sir, they're going to have a new Kang series. Plus, Kang is going to be more involved in the Fantastic Four series. So I think it's like Fantastic Four number 35 or something like that. Don't quote me. But in one of the solicits for that particular issue, I'm trying to remember right now, is it talks about the different versions of Kang. It says, hey, there's Kang, then there's like the Red Scorpion or Red Scarlet or whatever, and Mortis and everything. And then it mentions one of his last descendants, whose name is Scion. Scion's first appearance was in Micronauts Beyond the Voyage #8. Even though his first appearance was in #1. #1, he was just an egg, and then he eventually evolved and mutated into like an actual being, whatever. But that being has like wings or whatever. But what's interesting is that the time that time period that Micronauts Beyond the Voyage is set looks eerily similar to the backdrop for what's happening in Loki right now. So I don't know what to do with that, or whether that's just, hey, this is just the way that place always looks, no matter what, whether it's 100 years or 1,000 years from now. Don't know. So that's something to keep an eye out as you're looking through this Loki stuff. Just try and match that up with Kang and all the other Nexus stuff that's happening.
All right, so I think we're Loki'd out. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back, and then we'll talk about Marvel Comics for the last week. Let me see this one.
Let me ask you a question. Are you wanting to read a new comic book that has nothing to do with the big two? Are you tired of looking through countless titles and have no idea where to begin? Well, don't you worry, because the Random Dude Josh and Johnny the Machine Hughes has the podcast for you. Flipside Focus, only on the Undercover Capes Podcast Network.
All right. That's just a reminder to check out Flipside Focus and all of the other podcasts here on Undercover Capes. But let's get into Marvel goings-on for this week. There was a couple of big releases. We have the United States of Captain America #1 that has been getting some hype ahead of time before it came out, and that would be because of the first appearance of the first gay Captain America named Aaron Fisher. So let's kind of break that issue down, and what's the big deal? I mean, there's a great Alex Ross wraparound cover, and let's shout out Alex Ross, because I mean, you see all these friggin' Norman Rockwell art pieces, and you just wish you could afford one to frame and put in your house.
Yeah, I mean, Marvel has been going crazy with these covers. I'm not going to belabor the message when it comes to that one, but it's got a story. So let's I mean, just to put it in context of what's been happening with the Marvel so far, they've been bouncing back and forth in between introducing the new characters by the name of Shoom and I forget the name of the other guy, and then this weird story in which you take Captain America, or where they fill in the story with what's been happening with Captain America and Reed Richards during Nam and the Korean War and everything, which is kind of interesting, right? Because
Oh,
they
are
don't.
we talking Marvels now, or are we
Yeah,
talking?
yes, the
Okay,
Marvels.
all right.
Yes. Um, and what's even interesting is that even some cohorts of Black Panther are introduced in the story as well, which is weird upon itself because Wakanda within Nam, okay, fuck, but and then you also had Russia, so you had Red Guardian or whoever in it as well.
Yeah.
So there is that whole thing, and then you had the Shi'ar Empire, also showing up, and they put them in there as well. So what they're all converging on is they've heard about this one particular country and they don't need nobody, right? They're kind of like isolationism. They at one point threw out their government and then they put in this new guy who's a dictator, right? And they're like, well, that's kind of weird because they were trying to kind of move away from communism, but now they're going to isolation. So we need to figure out what's going on. So they go in, and even before they go in, they've heard about these weird magical powers that the government supposedly has. Like, all right, maybe it's just a mutant. But then they converge on it, and they find out that there's this weird, maybe like a venom pit, or symbiote pit, or whatever you want to call it. Still didn't really give an explanation, but it looks like the symbiotes, and what they're doing is they're dumping animals into this pit to make symbiotes out of them. And that's kind of at the heart of it. They captured the stuff, they destroyed what was going on, what was going on with that, and then they turned the stuff over to the U.S. government, and then that was it. And then they kind of move on. um, and then also that's apparently how Reed Richards got a lot more funding for his research and everything. So that was that. Um, the I like the Dom stories. I like the way they try to introduce and get people thinking about what's been what actually happened during the war, and where were these superheroes, and where were these big heads of industry and big heads of science during the war. I like that. It's just that I even like the justification for them going in. Hey, there's something weird going on. You might want to go check it out. Got it. It's just the landing, the getting out of it is just kind of sloppy. That was the only thing. It was just kind of sloppy. You had me in there. You freaking got me thinking, yep. But then you got out of it too quick, and I got it because they were only trying to do these one-shot stories with them. Got it, but you probably could have milked it for at least another 2 or 3 issues for me. But
This book for me reminds me so much of Busiek's Astro City, because it's like one issue, one shot, kind of. They focus on one kind of area in the universe, but the thing that Busiek's allowed to do here is just kind of pick up threads from literally everywhere in the Marvel universe and just do a story that he kind of wants to tell. And that I think is the attraction to this book, because there's not really any kind of a main character at all, and especially this is I think this is issue 3, and you've had very different focuses on the first couple of issues as compared to this one. But Busiek's whole idea of this book, The Marvels, is that he can go literally anywhere on the timeline, use any character he wants, and tell a story that no one's heard before. And to me, the one confusing thing, right, is how many different plot threads and characters and stuff that he weeds out. The Shi'ar, Red Guardian, Winter Soldier. You get Reed and Ben before they're the Fantastic Four. There was a page there with Sue, and I thought was Franklin so I'm sitting there going, did they just retcon that Franklin was alive before they before they became the Fantastic Four, and then realized it was Johnny, and I was like, oh, okay. And of course it's set 17 years in the past. So you have to kind of mess with the timeline, right? So it's 2021 now, so 17 years in the past is 2004, and they're running around in the jungles of Vietnam, which makes you think it's the Vietnam War, but it's not really. It's because, I mean, that's 30 years after that. And then you have the Monster Island creatures, the Fin Fang Fooms and all the, the monsters that were around in the old Atlas era. And he actually weaved together kind of an interesting tale with the, using the Venom Pit, and he actually pulled the original Doctor Strange out of his ass, which he was a one-off, and I think it was a Tales of Suspense issue from the early 60s, late 50s. And I thought, he uses the history of the Marvel Universe kind of adeptly with being having to kind of cram things into a later timeline and have things like other characters that he used, like Batroc and Alain Racine, who they don't even say is actually the Peregrine. And then you have George Tarleton, who's MODOK. He becomes MODOK later, but here they are in all their pre-superhero, pre-villain, their civilian identities before anything ever happened to them. So I thought it was a lot of fun, just kind of looking at. Oh wow! I never knew that George Tarleton did anything before he was MODOK. But it was I think it was fun. I think for Busiek to write, and that's kind of what I think kind of pops off the page is how much fun he had doing it. Putting Red Guardian and Winter Soldier together. We've never seen them together, even though we know that they were active around the same time, and just being able to see things kind of forming and have this not be a what if story. Like this is Busiek saying, yeah, all this stuff happened. It's all canon, but I'm just gonna play around and do what I want. I can't wait for the next issue. The first issue I read, which was a different timeline. It was in the modern time, and he actually introduced a different character who's actually the Tinkerer's son.
Oof.
But he runs around with all these discarded villainous weapons, but he's got someone's time gun or something, and he's got someone else's goggles that let him, they give him the superpowers, but they're all just gimmicks. And I'm like, I love reading about that guy, because he's just kind of using the technology that he finds floating around in his whatever, like his grandfather's attic or something,
Yeah. Shoom, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's a great concept, and I just, like I said, he flies around in an old Fantastic car. Yeah. I'm just like, this is so cool. But his Busiek's writing just kind of speaks to me. So that's what I kind of love, and I love to see what he's going to do next. So I would highly recommend this, and it's worth it just for the Alex Ross covers, man. Because
yes, it is.
He's just great. So
absolutely, man. I love it too. It's just little weird stuff, and with, like you mentioned, they had to fit a lot of weird stuff into a different timeline. So I'll give him a pass on it, just because it actually made sense of what he was trying to do and with the characters that he was trying to use. So
yeah, I mean, he does some cute little stuff in there. Like he threw the Shi'ar in there, and you were like, "What is the Shi'ar doing in there?" We didn't see the Shi'ar until the 80s, But I mean, in here it's 2004, right? So I mean, he has to compress everything.
Weird.
But it makes you wonder, like, what kind of machinations do they have going on back then? So I don't know. I can't wait, and I want to see him do other things. So
Yep.
I hope this series doesn't get canceled with issue 5. So
yep.
We'll see.
Captain America.
Yeah, So the United States of Captain America, like I said a few minutes ago, introduction of the first gay Captain America, Aaron Fisher, basically a train hopper. What do we call them? What did we call them back in the 50s? Hobos.
Yes, sir. Hobos. Hey, we still got people doing the same thing nowadays. So
Yeah. So I mean, this book is really kind of the overall plot is they have someone dressed as Captain America running around, you know, committing crimes or whatever. Ends up for some reason Steve Rogers is running around in his old his Shield Captain America outfit from Civil War II, I think. And I don't know why he's not in his original costume. But then they also have, Falcon makes an appearance back here after Falcon hadn't really appeared in Ta-Nehisi Coates' Captain America run. So good to see him back and working with Captain America again. But then, they're kind of trying to track down this person masquerading as Captain America. That's I don't know really what he's doing. He's committing crimes or beating people up, and he ends up stealing Cap's shield. And this is where they run into Aaron Fisher and realize that there are people that are representing Captain America or what America means to them, right? So that's basically, I think, the overall story here, right? Is you can, like, people portraying Captain America based on their vision of what America should be, or what America is to them, and that's where I think you're gonna be starting to introduce a lot of other characters calling themselves Captain America, but it's a Captain America that they identify with, not necessarily as Steve Rogers or as Sam Wilson, right? So that's where I can see that's where this is going. And then I imagine Steve and Sam are going to be running around in this series almost like background characters as they introduce these other characters. Because now they were going to, I think they're going to introduce a Native American Captain America too, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, so it looks like maybe all 50 states are going to get a Captain America.
Right.
All 50 states. Sort of like the 50 states Avengers, maybe all 50 states are going to get. Because in this particular issue, the kid mentions is that in his travels on this trail line, he's met other Captain Americas. And what they stand for is fighting for people who can't fight for themselves, especially in this little community. Because, what people don't realize is that among the homeless and hobos, or trailer travelers, it's a community, right? They try to take care of themselves as much as possible when they can, if they can. So this kid, who is representing himself as the Captain America for this little community, he at some point realized he didn't have to do it alone, because there's these other ones that are out there. Like, whether they have their own suits, I don't know, but apparently there's been enough that he's come across them. Now, the other interesting thing was apparently there's somebody else out there that has been killing these representative Captain Americas. So that was kind of interesting as well. And we already know, and spoiler alert, from some of the closing panels, is that it's a female. We don't know who it is. They didn't. All we know is we got a silhouette. So it's going to be interesting to see how they reveal who it is and what it is, or any of that other stuff. What I do know is that some of the covers for some of the next Captain Americas are kind of intriguing. I'm not going to put them out here. FOC is on Monday, July the 5th. If you want to check them out, but there's definitely some interesting covers out there that could foretell what's going to happen.
Yeah, so I just want to shout out, this was written by Christopher Cantwell with art by Dale Eaglesham, and I'm really glad to see Dale Eaglesham back to work, because I loved his stuff on Legion of Superheroes, and then that's probably like 15, 20 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, I don't know what else he's done since then, but this is the first time I've seen him since Legion of Superheroes, and I loved his stuff there, and his stuff stands up today. So, good on you, Dale.
It's always good to see some of the old heads still kicking it, still getting that work in.
Yeah, for
Hey,
sure,
man.
for sure. All right, so I mean, would you recommend United States of Captain America? I mean, I kind of think it's almost like kind of an important book. I mean, coming out in Pride Month, which I'm sure was planned that way. But
I didn't know what I didn't get. Even though the one of the main characters is gay, I didn't get knocked over the head with any type of craziness. So I was pleasantly surprised, right? He just came like, hey, here's the kid. This is what he's about. This is
Yeah.
where he lines up. Gives us more information about what else is going on, and then left us be. That's perfect. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they did. I know last week, which was our off week, they had the voices issue that came out, and I don't know if you caught that, but that was an 80-page giant that was focused on the gay community and gay creators and gay characters, and that. I think largely that issue was hit or miss. There was some really good stories in there. There were also some really bad ones, but I think overall it was successful. I just don't know, and I've said this before, that it is. I think it's important for inclusion, people to feel like they're represented in the comics. I just don't know if necessarily the fan base is actually buying the comics. Do you know what I mean?
They're not.
Right.
They're not, man. Because it's like what are those? What do you call it? Those Venn diagrams, right? Where, hey, there's Marvel freaking comic book collectors, and then there's us older heads, right? And then there's the younger generation, and then there's the young, the gay the LGBTQT generation, right?
Yeah.
And then comics is like way over here, and like another freaking circle that's like way over there. Now, what does match up with them is the manga community, and it freaking hits them. It doesn't freaking judge them. It's just says, hey, we understand that there's different points of life for you guys. Here's your story, right? But comics, once again, I've seen over and over again where comics is trying to match up with it and freaking try and go after that demographic. They're just not hitting it. Even in this next one that I want to talk about, which is X Factor. Is it X Factor? Yes, X Factor. So did you notice? So what I wanted to what the crazy thing that I wanted to talk about. Remember when the dude is doing this with the fingers?
Yeah. What's up with that? Yeah.
That's manga.
No.
That's like an anime. Yes, that's anime. That's this. Anytime one of the guys wants to summon their powers, every single character they do something crazy with the fingers. So
like
now they got casting
a spell or something.
Exactly. So now they got eye boy doing. Oh my goodness.
You must have laughed when you read that. I didn't know what the heck he was doing.
I was so confused. I was like, wait, what's going on right now? Because it's so overt, like that. If you read manga as well, you're like, wait, what's going on? And you don't know whether to like it or hate it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, but I tell you what, manga people won't get it because he says he's been working on it. I haven't seen you working on it.
Right.
The biggest part of manga is that you advance. You start at a shitty point, and then you get stronger enough, and you keep trying until you advance, and then you get powerful enough to do all this stuff, or at least you get assigned a mentor that freaking helps you out with that stuff. And that mentor is like, hey, you're going to do this, and now you're able to do this. We didn't get any of that with iBoy.
Hmm.
So, and then of course, you had the yaoi love, the man boy love in here. That was an interesting aspect, but we didn't get to see it. Right? That was kind of it wasn't like, hey, 2 issues ago or 2 weeks ago or a month ago, that was like a big thing. Now we get to see some of the fallout from that. We didn't get to see that. No, we got basically told the whole story of what was happening with this inside this issue.
So do you think that we just got to see the wrap up, because this was the last issue of X Factor?
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that the probably what we might have actually been shown, we didn't get shown? They just had to throw it at us because it's the last issue.
Yes, they did. My goodness, they they threw the best story that they had in the last issue without any type of context. And
Yeah.
they threw all the context in the world inside this little issue.
Yeah. Plus, they had to use the last page for the setup to Trial of Magneto, which, I mean, I'm pretty sure they did a Trial of Magneto back in X-Men number 200, 35 years ago. I don't know why we need another one, but
But yeah, I mean, don't get me twisted. Look, for all the gay pride stories that have been out there, this one was the one that was the best because it actually went after an issue. And that issue is that there are predators out there that target gay black men, right? It's an ongoing problem. Jeffrey Dahmer, he did that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He went after young gay black men, and he went after young gay Asian men, and he freaking killed them and ate them and did all that stuff. I mean, I don't know if I'm supposed to be able to talk about stuff on the MPP, but but
he's a super villain. He was a super villain.
He was a super villain of all super villains. Yeah, but if you're going to talk to me about the LGBT, don't freaking just give me a freaking gala and tell me everything's all rainbows inside that community. Give me some of the hard, gritty freaking stories, and lay out for me what's happening with the characters in that way. And I think this did it perfectly. If you look at it through that lens, that's why I liked it, and I definitely wanted to. It was just some of the other stuff. Like the manga, the weird manga stuff, the weird romance stuff. I didn't need that, but following this murder mystery was great.
Well, so and let's get. We're gonna. I mean, we've already kind of opened the can of worms, so might as well just get into it. Like when I started reading X-Men comics, so when I started reading mutant, stuff about mutants in Marvel, it wasn't okay to be gay, right? So you had to live in the closet. When I was in high school, if someone found out someone was gay, they would get beat up. They would get ostracized. It wasn't cool. I'm so happy now, 35 years later, that the world has kind of maybe evolved a little bit. But here, like and that was the selling point for mutant books back then, was the fact that the whole idea of being a mutant was being different, right? And it was used as a metaphor for literally everything, right? Everybody identified with the X-Men because anybody that was different, anybody that didn't have representation, right? So people of color identified as they loved X-Men, right? I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but from everything that I've experienced, everybody identified with mutants. Everybody loved the X-Men because anything that you identified with, if you were bullied in school, if there was something different, if you felt like you didn't belong, you felt like you belonged in X-Men because everybody was different.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody had that one particular character that they feel like their life matched up to, right? Even if you didn't, and once again, even if as an African American you didn't really fall in line with Bishop, even if you didn't fall in line with Storm, You know who you could feel kind of captured your isolationism?
Hmm.
Wolverine, right?
Yeah,
He
because you could
the
deal with the anger and the, and all the different emotions.
hmm because for all the isolationism and racism that the X-Men felt inside their own walls, they were kind of chippy off at Wolverine, and they freaking kind of pushed him off to the side until they actually needed him.
Yeah.
Until they actually needed him, they didn't really want him apart. And then they're like, "All right, Wolverine, come on, let's go fight." And that context is similar, very similar to how some groups, some demographics were actually treated in this country.
Yeah. So I mean, and I guess the point I'm getting at now is that the mutant books now today have kind of shifted from that, you know, we're not just different because we're mutants. We're also different because there's we're different LGBTQ wise, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now they're not so different because they can do things that we can't, and they have superpowers, or they have different physical traits like blue fur. Um, they're different because their sexual appetites are different, and they identify that way, and that to me actually brings them more uh, to center, and to me it doesn't make them as different, if that makes sense. you know to me
Absolutely.
it kind of takes away from the mystique of the whole mutant I experience. So when you realize that they're not so different, or the focus isn't there, right? The focus is on how gay they are, or what their sexual identity is, rather than their different powers and them not being able to fit in because of that. So I think a
Right.
lot of that focus, especially this month with the Hellfire Gala, where you know everybody's wearing these designer outfits, um, and the like you look at the cover, everything's pretty much thrown in your face that everybody's partying this entire month. So
Yeah.
you know,
Well, so another interesting thing is that if you look into the characters design in this particular issue, um, if you are familiar with people inside the gay community, you'll notice that how very similar um, some of those characters look like some of those. So, for instance, the black character in this one,
Prodigy.
hmm
Yeah.
he looks point on point similar to Billy Porter, who is huge, 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 huge in the gay community. When it comes to how the makeup is done, to him wearing a dress, to a very big freaking gala, to the golden wings and all that, that is straight Billy Porter.
Huh.
And I all day, every day. In a lot of these gala costumes, track those back to the Oscars or I forget the name of the gay pride freaking awards. Track those back to some of that stuff that they've worn, and then look really closely, and you'll realize where they got a lot of these costumes from and the looks from. Here was a surprise cameo that I didn't expect. Method Man from Wu Tang is in there. I don't
Really?
know. Yeah, he's in there. I don't know what's up with that, but that was kind of interesting. Um, but there we go. So I mean, he's been a big advocate of comic books and comic book reading and all that. So I guess it was cool to get him in there. And you know what's interesting? What's
Well,
even more interesting about that is that so the way to tell if the person is a mutant or not is that they have the little orchid flower
yeah.
in that panel. He does not have the orchid flower on him.
Oh, okay.
So according to that, Method Man is a mutant inside the Marvel Universe now.
Oh, okay. That's
So
interesting.
keep an eye out on that one.
Just
But
his power is the power to rock.
hey, I think either they're going to be nominated or they already are in the freaking Rock Hall of Fame. Maybe Wu Tang is. I
I
think so. I got to check that out.
Yeah.
Or they should be. I know Run DMC is, but you know. So speaking of rap, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've been tracking this news. This was huge news for the comic speculator community. The BlackRock Group, or it's the Blackstone Group, they bought CGC. CGC is the comic collectibles group that whenever you want your books slabbed, right, if you can send your books off, and they put them in these nice crystal plastic cases. They examine the lines and everything, and then they assign a grade. This is like one of the biggest things in the comic speculation community because this gives value to your comic books. Now, a huge capital group has actually bought them. Blackstone Group.
Is it Blackstone or is it BlackRock?
I think it's
BlackRock
Blackstone.
is okay.
Right. So Blackstone is the alternative assessment. Alternative asset group. BlackRock was the original capital group that gave money to Blackstone to actually get started. So people often get those confused. I actually had to figure it out myself last night while I was drunk, but here we go. I actually figured it out. Blackstone, they are partnering with a bunch of other smaller groups to include the Rock Nation group. Rock Nation is chaired by no other than Jay-Z. For those of you who don't know who he is, he's the husband of Beyonce. I don't know how he pulled that up, but hey, hats off to that dude. I got her filled up with 2 babies and everything. Hey, hats off to now he's getting into the comic book game.
So what does that mean for collectors? Is that I mean I'm not a huge slab guy, right? So like I don't have, none of my comics are graded. My comics are meant to be read. I pull them out and read them. I have some books that you'd probably be frightened that I pulled them out and read them instead of slabbing them. But I know that's big business, though. I know that there are people bringing their books to conventions, and they immediately they get them signed by the creator that's there with a witness, so that they know that it's authentic, and that whole thing. But I mean, are people making thousands and thousands of dollars on eBay selling these slab books?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's between. A slab book is the difference in between like $1,000 for a raw. So, for instance, Ultimate Fallout #4, which is the first appearance of Miles Morales, right? A raw, even if you say it's 9.8, that'll get you maybe $100. Slabbed, that'll get you $2,000. That is the big difference.
To me. I want to. If I'm buying something, I want to be able to take it out and look at the art, look at the pictures. Once it's slabbed,
you better buy more copies.
Once it's slabbed, you can't take it out. It's just wall. It's just you might as well just put it on your wall as a picture. You're missing.
That's what I do with mine.
I feel like you're missing the point. I know.
Well, see, that's why I buy 2 or 3 copies, though. I'm solely supporting the comic book community by buying 2 or 3 copies. No, you buy one to read, you buy one to sell, and you buy another one to just put away for retirement.
Well, maybe that's my problem, right? Because I have my Avengers 4 that I have up in my attic. I want to be able, if I want to go up there and I want to take it out, I can't just look at the cover and admire the fact that I own it. I have to take it out and I have to flip through the pages and admire the Kirby goodness in there and be able to put it back and put it back in its spot. And if I slab it, I might know that it's worth X amount of dollars, but it's not really worth. I mean, I never plan on selling it. My kids might once I croak, right? But and they won't care. but they'll know enough that they'll probably go get them slabbed before they sell them. You know what I mean?
Well, you never know. So that's why I definitely heavily suggest to everybody that if you take your top 5 or 10 books, and at some point just break them out for your kids and say, hey, if anything happens to me, this is what you should do.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't remember anything about any other stuff, remember these 5 books. This is what you should do with them.
Yeah, I have. I'm in the process of doing that with my kids. I'm separating. I'm actually going through my collection and grabbing key books, and even so, dude, I'm like 50 years old, and I've had these books in my collection for 30-something years. Like I'll look at a book and I can't remember if it's a key issue or not, right?
Yeah.
So like I sit there and I'm like, oh, is this the first appearance of someone? You know, and I was telling Al the other day, I was going through my X Factor because I had a complete run of X Factor, and he's like, pull out this issue, first appearance of Apocalypse, put out this issue, you know, and I'm just like, okay, because I'm gonna have to take your word for it because I don't remember. I know it's there, but that's to me is like I know that there's value there, and
Right.
it's just a question of finding it.
Right. So that's where CGC also comes in, and like, unfortunately, like you said, the negative is that you can't freaking open it up. The positive is that if there's anything important like a first appearance, they will put that first appearance in the notes at the top, like a nice freaking font, so you can pull it up. Oh, hey, this is the first appearance of so and so, with appearances by so and so. So that's
So
a nice thing.
here's another question, because I mean, like I said, I'm ignorant about the whole slabbing thing. When you get that slabbed, is it held together by like screws or something, or how do you know if it's been tampered with or opened up or?
Well, yeah. So there are these clips, right? So once it's clipped in, that's it. You can't freaking unclip it and do something else. The only way to unclip it you would break the whole case, and you would see cracks along the case from when somebody tried to unclip it.
Okay, so I mean, it's tamper-proof, right?
Right.
So
Mhm.
if someone tampers with it, you'll know. And well, so what if you drop it? What if what if you drop it? Do you mess up your book, mess up your slab? You know?
Right. Yeah. In certain instances, you can return that back to CGC and get it reslabbed.
Okay. Do you think that since Blackstone, so Blackstone acquires CGC, do you think they might be going public?
Well, so for instance, BlackRock, they're already public. Blackstone, they are going to stay a private equity group. Here's where they are going to make their money off. So you know for a fact that. So I don't know if you've ever watched the Thomas Crown Affair, old movie about.
Maybe a million years ago when it came out.
Yeah, that was the one about art, right? A guy went around the world stealing art. And then, there was this lady who was charged with, who was an insurance claim agent, who was, her job was to run around and freaking chase him down and find out who he was, what he was doing, and and she thought that maybe he had something to do with all the stolen art, because if her company had to pay out, they would lose money. So she was she eventually fell in love with the guy, but it kind of explained. It's a definitely good movie, so I suggest that you and your wife take some time to watch the movie. But it definitely explained some ins and outs of the art world. Well, what does that mean for comics? Well, the Blackstone private group, they have access to a financial division. In that financial division, in theory, would run like the Bank of America finance division. So Bank of America has a finance or an art asset finance division whereby they have an assessor that goes out to your place for your art, assesses how much that book should cost, how much you need to have it insured for, and then they take that information, they give you a certification and everything, and then with that certification, your art is now capital to be used as collateral in a loan. And you can take out loans on your art. It'll never leave your house, but you can now take it out as collateral.
Hmm.
So now that Blackstone is involved, you can do the same thing, right? at some point, you would be able to do the same thing. Somebody would come over to your house, they would assess your X-Men #1 or whatever, and then they go back, and then now you can now take out a loan on your comic books. There are certain now don't get it twisted. There are certain companies out there that allow you to do that right now with some, but they're not. They give you what, $2,000. They give you $3,000. There are books out there, comic books out there that we know are worth millions of dollars. That are worth 70,000. For instance, apparently an X-Men #1 within the last week sold for like around $70,000, and another one that was just a little bit worse went for $30,000. Right?
Wow. Okay.
So imagine not having to sell your book anymore, right? To get cash, all you would do is just take out a loan on it. And you would just pay back that loan eventually, right? That's where the big thing comes from, and that's where we want to see this freaking happen, because we are spending a lot of money on these hard copies for these books. So I would want to see that not only am I just throwing my money down a well, but maybe at some point there might be some collateral to be had for these books. That's where the power lies. But unfortunately, we still got some scumbags in the community that would want to freaking, take advantage of this, and they're going to put a sour taste in people's mouths. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with all this.
It would be interesting to see a lot of people taking loans out on their comic book collateral, and then maybe not being able to pay that loan back and having their comic books confiscated.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. And then what happens? What do they auction them off again?
Yeah. So for instance, and I forget where it is in Sweden, what they do is, if you really wanted like revolving collateral loans and everything, you send it off to this one particular bank in Sweden. And this particular bank, when you're ready, you call them and say, hey, yep, I am ready to auction, and they auction it off, right? And then they take it downstairs, they pull it out for the new owner to look at, and then they put it back into the freaking safe, and that's it. You get to see, and that's it. And then a person waits about a month, and then that person freaking auctions it, and it never leaves that freaking bank, ever.
Wow. Man, so that's the deeper interests of hardcore collecting, and that's
where we have to go. If we want this this hobby to evolve out more than just speculators, right? We're a dying breed at this moment anyway, right?
Yeah.
And we want to engage future asset collectors and our future kids to get them more interested in. This is the way we have to go. We gotta be able to show that there's actual value in this, and this would be the absolute perfect way to freaking do this. It's going to get brutal because now that there's a capital group such as Blackstone, and I forget the name of the asset capital group that's backing Beckett right now. Once they start getting into this game, there's gonna be hell to pay when it comes to these prices. Like I said, X-Men #1 was maybe a $10,000 book when the pandemic hit, but now that this is happening and now stuff is popping off at $70,000,
prices are just gonna go up.
Oh yeah, so
interesting.
So,
I think I'm gonna keep my reader copies. I don't know if I'm gonna take the dive into slabbing my books. So we'll see. I think eventually that's where my kids will do that. Because they don't have the emotional attachment to the books that I do. So I don't think that they'll have a problem slabbing the book. So that they never will have to read it. They know we're never going to read it anyway. So
yeah. Well, here's what I suggest, guys: do make a decision quickly, right? Because here's what happened with PSA. So PSA is the company that slabs sports cards, right? And at the current time, they are not accepting new submissions because they are so backed up. Once Beckett and that new capital group came in, it was game over. People were just sitting in their freaking cars, Pokemon cards, trading cards, all that stuff. So it got locked up.
Oh, I see. I have no problem with people slabbing trading cards because you can see the front, you can see the back. You know,
Yeah.
because the comic book, the whole idea is for you to open it and read it. So that's
But what's been happening now is that because of the pandemic and people have nothing better to do, the waiting times for CDC has been getting worse, right? Getting bad, right?
Yeah.
Like you're getting 2 to 3 month wait times. It'll take them a month after it arrives there for them to actually accept your book, then 2 to 3 more months for them to actually review your book. So that's getting crazy. So if comic books becomes an asset class, remember all it is right now it's an alternative investment.
Right.
If it becomes an asset class, there's going to be hell to pay. You're not going to be able to pay or just send in your stuff for cheap anymore. This stuff is going to raise to like $100, $150, maybe $200, $300 to get your stuff slabs, and it's going to take months for it to happen.
When you know what we need to do,
and you're going to have to get insurance for your comic books now.
Oh Jesus! I have my insurance license, so I can sell you insurance for your comic books.
Hey, I hear new business. That's new business. Definitely.
So what we need to do is we need to spend an episode just talking about the whole collecting side of comics and the ins and outs and pitfalls and what you should do to maximize the value of your collection.
Absolutely. That just shoot 4 to 5 hours on that.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of No Prize Podcast. Be here for our late July episode. We'll be dropping in a couple of weeks, and we'll have lots more to talk about. We'll talk about the wrap up of Loki next episode, and we'll be reviewing Black Widow. So there's going to be a lot of nice Marvel. Maybe we might have an hour-long MCU episode. So who knows? But be here in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk to you soon.